Tonight, from the Red Chamber to the Court Chamber, Mounties take their criminal case against Pamela Wallin to the next level. The fraud investigation into a scandalized senator.
The RCMP is interested if there's a reasonable prospect of conviction.
A CTV News exclusive.
We've got a plan. We're sticking to it.
Recession rhetoric amplified.
We've got a different approach from Mr. Harper. We're going to get it done.
Dull economic data sharpens the political attacks.
But only one of us will back up words with action.
And a bruising end to the summer in British Columbia.
We'll just ready ourselves for anything that happens from now on.
Torrential rain, recovery, and repeat.
CTV National News with Lisa Laflamme.
Good evening. It's been barely a week now since the Duffy trial went back into legal hibernation. And today there's a stirring in another corner of this Senate scandal. CTV News has learned that while most people were focused on the courtroom, the RCMP were completing the case against Pamela Wallin. CTV's Ottawa Bureau Chief Robert Fife with the exclusive details.
Inside the Senate building, Pamela Wallin was back at work but not talking.
I'm a producer with CTV National News. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm sorry this line is tied up.
Wallin's suspension was lifted the day Prime Minister Stephen Harper called the election. So she's back on the public payroll, receiving Senate perks. Now CTV News has learned she may soon be receiving notice of charges for fraud and breach of trust. After an 18-month investigation, the Mounties who allege she defrauded taxpayers for personal and partisan travel have, according to legal sources, officially handed their file to Crown prosecutors.
It wouldn't be unusual to have the Crown review the brief to ensure that there's a reasonable prospect of conviction.
That means charges may be imminent, a political problem for Stephen Harper. He staunchly defended Wallin after CTV News revealed she'd billed tens of thousands of dollars of improper travel claims.
I've looked at the numbers. Her travel costs are comparable to any parliamentarian traveling from that particular area of the country.
At the time, Harper already knew Wallin had secretly repaid $38,000 to the Senate, hoping an independent audit would disappear. It's all spelled out in emails filed at the Duffy trial, detailing how the PMO tried to protect Wallin, who was a popular speaker and fundraiser at Tory events. Then Chief of Staff Nigel Wright, who was at the same time mired in the secret negotiations to pay Duffy's expenses, wrote in one memo, "I would expect that Senator Wallin would be given the opportunity to address any unusual expenses through repayment if that is appropriate, as she has already done with some inadvertently claimed."
I have no doubt that Mr. Harper's senior staff were involved in pushing Senator Wallin to pay back some money and as part of a concocted story, exactly as they did in the Senator Duffy case.
Wallin's lawyer won't say if she was pressured by the PMO to reimburse the Senate, telling CTV News, "Because these are issues touched upon in a Duffy trial, it would be inappropriate for me to comment until that trial is over." The Duffy trial resumes after the federal election, but charges against Wallin may not wait. Former RCMP Commissioner Norman Inkster says politics won't influence the timing.
The election or politicians have nothing to do whether or not the charges are going to be laid, at least in this country.
Ultimately, Wallin paid back more than $150,000, something she says she now regrets because it made her look like she was guilty. Lisa.
All right, Bob. So obviously the RCMP doesn't take its cues from the government, but politically, what is the impact if those charges are laid before October 19th?
Well, we saw from the Duffy trial the Conservative numbers dropped, and Lisa, this definitely could be a major obstacle to his re-election since Harper handpicked Wallin for the Senate. But Lisa, in both the Wallin and Duffy cases, evidence suggests the first instinct of Harper staffers were to cover up potential wrongdoing to avoid calling in the police.
All right, Bob Fife with the exclusive details on the Wallin case tonight. Thanks, Bob. Of course, Harper is trying to keep the campaign focused on the economy, but the conversation didn't quite go his way today. A new survey of 16 economists has this country already in a recession. They've downgraded their forecast for growth. Tomorrow, Stats Canada will have the definitive word with the release of the all-important GDP numbers. CTV's Richard Madden has more on day 30 of this 78-day campaign.
Conservative leader Stephen Harper serving coffees and shaking hands. But the man in charge of Canada's economy was reluctant to take over the till. Harper wants to make this election about the economy, but his track record could be in serious trouble. Stats Can will reveal tomorrow if Canada slipped into recession in the first half of this year. And at a rally this morning, Harper avoided using the R word.
We've had a contraction that has been focused almost entirely in one particular section of the economy, particularly the energy sector of the economy.
But economic data shows declines in virtually all sectors of the economy. And today, in the oil heartland of Alberta, the new NDP government revealed the biggest deficit in the province's history.
This report, therefore, shows a $5.9 billion deficit for the 2015 fiscal year. I want to underline that this may not be the final number.
All parties now using the weakening economy to advance their campaign narrative. New Democrats say it shows the Conservative brand is a failure.
Stephen Harper's plan is not working.
Mulcair will keep sending Stephen Harper's child benefit checks to millionaires.
Liberals going after both parties in a new ad, but sharpening attacks on the NDP's big spending promises.
Mr. Mulcair is promising a lot of hocus pocus, and when it's all hocus pocus, well, some promises are going to be breached, some programs are going to be lost.
While Harper accuses his opponents of being inexperienced and their policies unaffordable.
We're living in times of ongoing global economic uncertainty. Now more than ever is the time to stay the course.
Now Harper has built his brand as a strong economic manager, so confirmation of a technical recession, even a mild one, could make him vulnerable. Lisa.
All right, Richard, covering the Conservative campaign in Toronto tonight. Thanks, Richard. Despite the criticism from Conservatives and Liberals, NDP leader Tom Mulcair still made another major spending promise today. This time he pledged money for battered women's shelters on reserves and off.
And we will be putting back funding of $40 million over 4 years.
Mulcair accused the Harper government of scrapping the shelter enhancement program, but the NDP was later forced to clarify after the Conservatives pointed out the funding wasn't scrapped. It's now dispersed through another program. But an unexpected concession today did come from Stephen Harper on the ISIS mission. It's not going as well as he expected.
Not maybe as much as we'd like, but they're not, a year ago, they were literally on the verge of sweeping over the entire region. So at least that has been halted.
And Syria's cultural heritage took another direct hit from ISIS. Satellite images confirm the ancient Temple of Bel in Palmyra, one of the most venerated sites in the world, has been destroyed. As Syria buckles under the weight of ISIS and its own civil war, thousands have joined the long line of refugees desperate to reach Europe. Night after night, we've seen the hopeless images. Tonight, something different happened. In the center of Vienna, a crowd of 20,000 welcomed a migrant train.
Say it loud, say it clear. Refugees are welcome here.
This show of solidarity is in stark contrast to what happened earlier in the day when Austrian police cracked down on migrants at the border with Hungary. CTV's Paul Workman has that story.
They are phantoms in the night, Syrian refugees trying to sneak into Hungary, pushing through wire fences, avoiding the grip of border guards, because Hungary is the prize, the gateway to Europe.
All these people walking around in the dark, afraid from the police, because they're looking for a respectful life. They don't want any help from anybody. They just want respectful papers to stay in a country, and they will work by themselves.
And Hungary's conservative government is just as determined to fence the migrants out. A wall of steel and razor wire going up in a continent used to walls and borders coming down. If Europe fails on the question of immigrants, Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel warned today, it won't be the Europe we imagine. It's not a soccer chant, it's a destination. Hundreds of migrants held back at the train station in Budapest. Halted there because of overcrowding, said local officials, not as a form of border control. The same argument Austria gave for new vehicle checks on the Budapest to Vienna highway. Traffic was backed up 30 kilometers today, purely a safety measure, said police, after more than 70 migrants were found dead in the back of a truck last week. They're going to check every vehicle on the road, says this frustrated German trucker. This is unbelievable for Europe. Just as unbelievable is the number of migrants desperately trying to get to Europe and the risks they're willing to take. Last week, Norway reported, Lisa, that a trickle of migrants has even turned up at an Arctic border crossing with Russia.
Oh, unbelievable story. Paul, thanks for this reporting tonight from London. As politicians in Ukraine debated ways to bring some lasting peace to a divisive region, clashes outside Parliament there ended in mass injuries and the death of a soldier hit by a grenade. The protest was about a parliamentary vote to grant autonomy to areas held by Russian-backed separatists. Tens of thousands of people in southwest British Columbia are spending a third night in the dark after vicious winds on the weekend brought down hundreds of trees and power lines. It was the most destructive storm in a decade. And as CTV's BC Bureau Chief Melanie Nagy reports, the massive cleanup just got a little more complicated.
Beneath that tangled mess, cars crushed by fallen trees. So much damage and so much to clean up. After a major windstorm ripped through southwestern BC.
While trees are down and tree debris along Highway 1.
The storm, which hit Saturday, uprooted nearly 2,000 trees in and around Vancouver, damaging dozens of homes and vehicles.
When the trees came down, the house shook.
500,000 people also lost power.
Yeah, these are all bad.
Bill Tawana, a pizza shop owner, was one of them.
Lost at least a few hundred customers and tens of thousands of dollars a sale over the weekend.
Repair crews are frantically working to help restore power. Despite that, thousands are still without. And at this wildlife sanctuary, no light means treating rescued animals outdoors.
We're trying to get as many as we can outside.
As the cleanup from the weekend storm continues, there's a new concern today, the heavy rain. The fear now is flooding. A rainfall warning has been issued for the region. Amounts could reach 80 millimeters.
We're in for $205,000 already from the last flood.
Mark Ely's house was flooded just last year, an experience that's taught him to be prepared.
We put a call into the district to ask for some sandbags. They brought a few a little while ago, not enough.
The heavy rain is expected to last until tomorrow, but the windstorm cleanup, that will likely take weeks to complete. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, Vancouver.
The wind and what's blowing around in it shut down the heart of Toronto's financial district today, all because of safety concerns over this swaying antenna on top of a skyscraper owned by Donald Trump. No traffic, no pedestrians allowed across several blocks until at least tomorrow. Trump Tower's been ordered to call in an engineer. Coming up in 2 minutes' time, gasoline for less than $1. Great, if you can get it.
It makes me wonder who's controlling what gas comes into the province.
Nova Scotia, where fuel and answers are in short supply. And a poignant encounter with the Pope as the Vatican goes video.